Shall we census? Yes.
Just keep it.
Yes, we can start.
Yes. Are we all ready? Thank you all for coming to our press conference. It will be addressed by Comrade Mchangwa, our Secretary for Information and Publicity in Zanu PF. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, friends and comrades from the fourth estate for again coming to Zanu PF, the home of the permanent Zimbabwe revolution. As you can see, the revolution is very much alive. Today is April Fool's Day. It is the morrow of 31st March. As it turned out, the people of Zimbabwe have refused to be fools on April Fool's Day. The 31 March was supposed to become a watershed between the march to progress and the push to regression, to retrogression. The people of Zimbabwe chose the latter. They are continuing with the progress of the Zimbabwe revolution. They are continuing with the agenda of President E.D. Mnangagwa, the revolutionary visionary, even from very tender age, who he has mastered to survive up to where he is today, and he has given inspired leadership in the Second Republic, which has ignited the hopes and aspirations of the Zimbabwe people on an unprecedented scale. It has attracted even the admiration of Africa at large, as I shall indicate later in my presentation. So this is inspired leadership, and as I speak to you, he is actually chairing the Zimbabwe cabinet as usual on a Tuesday. There were people who in the last couple of weeks had razzmatazz, especially on social media, about the demise of the Second Republic and about the removal of President Mnangagwa from office. They've come to naught. They are putting on brave faces. They are rationalizing loss, trying to make it as loss as if it is a win. There's something real about power. It is binary. You are either with it or you are either without it. And as I talk, the President Mnangagwa is actually with the power. He has shamed political nitwits, ignorant ciphers, aspiring dictators. All of them have been shamed by the fact that he is still in power, firmly in support, being supported by the people of Zimbabwe. And the people of Zimbabwe showed their political mettle yesterday when they decided not to become part of internal strife, not part of mayhem, not part of the destruction of property, not part of that scourge of Africa of being used by those who are against African progress. The people of Zimbabwe have always argued they are the most organized and the most structured on the African continent. They fought a war, they won a war that entailed discipline. You don't win a war more so against the foremost imperial power of the time, Britain, unless you get organized, you get structured. And that is precisely what these people of Zimbabwe have shown. They watched in the last 4 months in the last 2 months of 2024, the mayhem in neighboring Mozambique. Nearly 400 people dying simply because social media was encouraging young people to be destructive, to be anarchists, to be nihilists in their own country. People of Zimbabwe could not countenance the prospect of that calamity befalling Zimbabwe. So yesterday, when people were expecting them to be out in the streets, behaving like hooligans in Maputo last year, they decided to stay at home. They decided to be disciplined. They decided to watch the situation, because people who fought a war are always very careful about their next move. They want to know what the enemy is doing and what he is not doing before they make a move, because that is the discipline of war. And at the end of the day, there was total peace in the country. Those who have decided for the overthrow of the democratic order were disappointed. And today, they are putting on brave faces, trying to turn defeat into victory. It is the matter of their delusion which actually led them to the predicament of their failure yesterday. So I want to congratulate the people of Zimbabwe for maintaining peace, for maintaining order, and for maintaining faith in the leadership of President E.D. Mnangagwa, but more important, for keeping the gospel of the Zimbabwe revolution on the straight and the narrow. And we are now going to enter a period, a very exciting period in the development of Zimbabwe. In the history of Zimbabwe, a new chapter has been written before 31 March 2025 and after 31 March 2025. It's a watershed in the history of the people of Zimbabwe, another milestone in the store of achievements by the people of Zimbabwe. And as Zanu PF, we are very, very, very thankful of the maturity, of the discipline, of the restraint, but also of the caution which they viewed events as they passed, so that not a shed of blood is spilled for a cause which was at most quixotic. Here we had somebody patently drunk, every day coming on social media talking about how he wanted to lead Zimbabwe to a new future. A drunkard, every day coming, and he was being lionized by detractors, by social media. And then people of Zimbabwe were expected to follow drunken brooding and hallucinations into the streets so that they can remove order and the prospect of prosperity for chaos. The people of Zimbabwe said, no, we don't behave like that. There is something important in every insurrection, and it is called leadership. There is something important in every revolution. It is called leadership. If you can't provide leadership, people will not follow on anything. Even if all of you to now, I say to you, let's do something. You want to ask me, who is the leader? Because you want to have confidence with the leader before you can follow. Now, you tell me that people of Zimbabwe were supposed to have confidence in blessed Geza and follow him. They didn't do that. They are much smarter than that. Maybe there were those who were behind him who didn't have the courage to come out into the open and say we are the leaders. But once you say you don't have the courage to come out into the open, you don't have the courage of your convictions. Why should the people of Zimbabwe follow you if you don't have the courage of your convictions? So even those who may have been in the shadows, they proved that their political judgment was wrong. But there are also foreigners who always cheerlead the prospect of Africa plunging into internecine disorder. Times have changed. The geopolitics have changed. The mere fact that in January a new president came into the United States, Trump, with a different vision from what America had espoused over the last 6 decades, should have been a signal to say the era of Ukrainian Maidan revolutions is over, because that was the template which was being used. The yellow revolutions of post-Berlin Wall collapse in Europe. That was the template which was being used here. But you can see what it has done to Ukraine. It has destroyed the country. And those who were the authors of that mayhem in Ukraine lost the election in America. And there was 180 degree about 10 by the American administration. You saw the drama in the White House between Zelensky and Trump. It should have been an indication to the foreign detractors and their local handlers that the times have changed. You can't expect automatic backing for any wayward behavior about changing governments in Africa to get backing from the White House. Perhaps it is very indicative that as soon as Trump came into power at Mondlane, the braggart of Maputo, gave up and returned back home. It should have been indicative, because normally Washington is the country which supports that kind of wayward behavior. But he was told, and he read the tea leaves, and he went back home. And guess what? Last Sunday, I got a picture of him, the same Mondlane in Mozambique, the one who had caused the mayhem. Here is a picture of him. Do you see whom he is greeting? You can see the tall man who was here for the campaign. He is the new president, the young president of Mozambique, Chapo. So 400 Mozambicans died because of this Mondlane. And then last Sunday, he goes to make a handshake, looking for a job from President Chapo. Zimbabwean people would have been placed in similar circumstances, where people die for nothing, and then a politician survives. Then he comes afterwards to look for his own crumbs on the table of defeat. Some people were commanding this March 31 thing from the safety of South Africa. In the night, there are nightclubs comporting themselves with drinking and other nefarious behavior. And then they go on their social media and encourage people of Zimbabwe to go into the streets on their behalf. You are safe in Cape Town, you are safe in Johannesburg, and you want people of Zimbabwe to go on the street in your behalf. You think people of Zimbabwe, with their experience of their political maturity, they would listen to that? They wouldn't. So this is exactly what happened. People of Zimbabwe, we want to hail them. I also want, on this occasion, to give a pat on our state apparatus. It came out in full force to protect peace and order. And they proved that they are not a joystick for political daydreamers. This is a state apparatus born out of the pain of war. It knows its allegiance to the people of Zimbabwe. And somehow there was a belief that it is akin to any of the post-colonial inherited armies of Africa, which can be commanded from London and from Paris to go to State House and remove leaders. It does not work like that with our army. It is a revolutionary army steeped in the traditions of the people of Zimbabwe. It is not the army of Mobutu Sese Seko. It is not the army of Idi Amin. It is not the army of Bokassa. It is not the army of Ironsi and all those wayward African military leaders who pander for foreign interests at the expense of the people of Africa. No, it is not. And the president, to make sure that the state of apparatus was in safe hands, he made dramatic changes in the structure of our state apparatus. I want to congratulate the new leaders who were put in place as we approach 31. And they've proved their mettle by making sure that they are loyal to the President of the Republic, that they defend the interests of the people of Zimbabwe, and that they keep the professional traditions of our state apparatus intact. It is well respected all over Africa. So heads off to General Matatu. And congratulations too, as I say, heads off. Heads off to Comrade Shepard Mtamba at ZRP. And heads off to Director General Fulton Mangwanya at CIO. They assumed office in the nick of time at very short notice, and they proved their worth to the people of Zimbabwe, to the president who appointed them in those posts. And they made sure that Zimbabwe remains orderly and peaceful on what was supposed to be a fateful day. This is a salutary lesson to those who harbor the idea that they can personalize the Zimbabwe army. It is not. Why would you want to say that you somehow believe that you own the Zimbabwe army simply because you survived a war? Do we now assume that when we were fighting, you were trying to keep your life safe for the day when you can aspire to power? And how are you keeping your life safe? Because in war, it's a lottery of life. Anything can happen to you at any time. I went through that war, particularly for us who were in Mozambique. You cannot aspire to be president of the Republic of Zimbabwe in a war because you never know when you are going to die. You are much more preoccupied with the task at hand to fight for the freedom of the country. Now, if you begin to have illusions afterwards that you are anointed to become the leader of Zimbabwe simply because you survived that war, maybe you begin to question credentials. So those who were trying to think that the army of Zimbabwe can become a platform for the seizure of power, they have been proved wrong. That template does not apply to Zimbabwe. I also want to use the press conference to appeal to the Zimbabwe people to go back to work. Your president is at work. Your army, your police, your intelligence apparatus, they have proved that they can maintain peace and order in the country. Your safety is assured. There won't be any destruction of property. You can continue with your day-to-day activities, which make sure that they bring food to the table, they bring school fees to children who are going to school, and they make sure that your general welfare is maintained. Please, people of Zimbabwe, go back to work and proceed to work even harder with the confidence that the future of Zimbabwe remains orderly, peaceful, and very democratic, and indeed very constitutional. The Bible of Zimbabwe is the Constitution, not illusions of traditions. No, traditions are encapsulated in a constitution. Some people want to espouse that there are two strands in the history of the people of Zimbabwe. One is constitution, one is tradition. And they want to say tradition favors them. No, that's dynastic, that's monarchical. That's not the way Zimbabwe is run. Zimbabwe is run through the constitution, which is an expression of the vote of the people at the polls to choose who their leader is. And hardly 2 years ago, they chose President Idi Mnangagwa. They gave him 5 years in office. he has to complete that mandate before the next decision by the Zimbabwe people to choose who is their leader. So let him go back to work and do what he knows best, which is to push the agenda for the progress of Zimbabwe. And like I indicated earlier, he's going to do wonders now that the cobwebs of detractors and their foreign backers have been shunted aside. He is going to be very focused, and he is going to make sure that the trajectory on which Zimbabwe has been on is maintained, but more than maintained, it is solidified so that Vision 2030 is eminently attainable. This is where we are going. So my appeal to the Zimbabwe people is that peace reigns in the realm of Zimbabwe. Please go back to work, knowing that your president is in charge, knowing that your state apparatus is there to make sure that there is peace and order, and knowing that the democratic ethos of the people of Zimbabwe are assured. We are a democratic country. You will get a choice to who becomes your leader according to the Constitution of Zimbabwe, according to the time periods which that Constitution stipulates, and you shall freely express yourselves as to the direction of your next leader. Nobody is going to be imposed upon you, as the president has indicated. You heard him time and again as we were leading up to this mayhem, saying, I don't own Zanu PF. It belongs to the people of Zimbabwe. It is not on me to dictate what direction Zanu PF should follow. He has repeatedly said that. This is under the clamor of those who were trying to say they have somehow a divine right to be anointed or to be the next leaders of Zimbabwe. He has steadfastly refused to take that direction. He has taken the party back to the people of Zimbabwe. And the people of Zimbabwe have embraced that message yesterday by making sure that the democratic tradition of Zimbabwe remains strong. They will not be abused to be involved in any wayward and unconstitutional changes of the leadership of Zimbabwe. They have a canon, and the canon is the Constitution of Zimbabwe. It is their Bible. So they are sticking to that Constitution, and their behavior yesterday lived and built up to that image of an organized, structured, democratic country. So assure, go back to work and proceed with whatever you want to do, knowing that Zimbabwe is going to make progress. I want to dwell on the leader of Zimbabwe a little bit more, so that your confidence, the confidence of the people of Zimbabwe, can be seen to be properly reposed. The president of Zimbabwe, in the Second Republic, he has spared no effort to address the historical grievances, even those of minorities. And it is precisely his achievements in that area which made sure that those who were trying to appeal to minorities, to grievances of the minority, they got no response. There were shades of trying to say, oh, there's a minority in the west of Zimbabwe, there are historical issues about Gukurahundi, therefore this is your time to come and then do this and do and that. But because the sincerity of the president has reached out to that constituency, there was no response. There was an appeal to try to use the grievances of the war veterans in this instance. But the president has even made up a league of war veterans. They are beginning to see that the marginalization of the First Republic is being addressed. They refused. I know, because we were at the forefront of the changes in 2017 as war veterans. We had a cause, but this time there was no cause. Even somebody falsely donning military fatigues at 70 years, trying to say, I'm your leader. They didn't follow him. It was an outside figure thrust from Norway, trying to make sure it was a cut and paste operation. By the way, when I told of revolutions and insurrections, Professor Jonathan Moore is right. History never repeats itself except in tragedy or in farce. And this attempt at a cut and paste operation about 2017, it turned out to be a farce. It was a farce indeed. So Marx was right that the original that Professor Jonathan gets that quotation from Karl Marx. You know, it was a farce because people of Zimbabwe are not interested in a farce. So an appeal to that constituency again failed. There was an attempt to appeal to youth of this country. But the people of this country see the tremendous energy which is being released by the president as big investments move into the country on a scale unprecedented in Africa. I mean, how many power stations are now being built from coal in Wanke? How many lithium plants have been set up? Everywhere there is progress. We are looking at the prospect of new towns coming up because of what the president is doing. Now, this generates hope among the youth. They know that, you know, these are job-creating opportunities because they are creating a bigger economy. They want jobs from 7 to 5 every day. That is what a town is there for, jobs from 7 to 5. And when investments of the scale which the president is bringing to the country begin to materialize, young people see hope. The diaspora, they see hope in the president. That's why you see so much construction. So every and each constituency is seeing hope in President Mnangagwa. And then, you know, somebody saunters along and tries to say, we can create a difference. What difference can you create when we can see the material aspects of what the president is doing? So the appeal to whatever constituents, to whatever minority gripes failed because the people are seeing hope in President Mnangagwa. And his stature is growing so much. His experience of dealing with minorities in Zimbabwe. Do you know where it is another impact? In Eastern DRC, there was the prospect of a full-blown war in DRC a couple of weeks ago. Our president, through his wise diplomacy, linked up SADC and East African Community. And now, a couple of days ago, we saw the generals in the Eastern DRC shaking hands. Some are retreating from advances which they had made, which would have caused even more pain to that country. Where is it coming from? It is our president who is persuading his fellow African colleagues from either camp, from either schism, from either divide, to say that is not the way we should solve our issues as African. Guns must die. Now, this is a man who is being admired abroad, outside of your country. He's being admired by Africa. And you are busy panning him at home because you have drunk a few bottles of wine and you are being fed up illusions of being in power the next morning. It means that you are an intellectual cipher. It means that you are a crypto-revolutionary. Yeah, you know, this is, and that's why the people of Zimbabwe dismissed you. But I also made an allusion, to the changes which have happened in America. It is very important to read the geopolitics right when you are trying to make some changes which have got implications. If it was the former administration of America, if that woman had won, there would have been cheerleading of the nonsense which was happening in Zimbabwe yesterday and the weeks running to 31 December. But it's different with President Trump. He wants progress in Africa. Do you know what he did 2 weeks ago? Please fasten your seat belts. He approved a loan of $4.7 billion US for Mozambique to build the gas deposits in Cabo Delgado. This is big money. Africa has never seen money on that scale coming from America. I am a student of international business. The last time Africa ever had a deal comparative was probably in 2006 when ICBC of China paid 6 billion for Standard Bank of South Africa. I know because Pindi Nyandoro, the Zimbabwean banker at Standard Bank, was in charge of those negotiations, and she was coming to Beijing, and I was hosting her when I was ambassador in Beijing. So a new administration in America comes in to what was supposed to become a security-ridden problematic, a security threat-ridden problematic area of Mozambique. But it is the third largest gas deposits in the world, Cabo Delgado. He approves a loan of 4.7 billion for Export-Import Bank of America. You see, the best person, the most serious person in any business engagement is the one who quickly reaches out to his wallet and writes a check. And that's what President Trump did. He wrote a check for President Chapo of Mozambique last week. This is our neighbor, Mozambique. Can you imagine the impact of 4.7 billion US dollars in our neighboring Mozambique, on Zimbabwe, on the ports, on the logistics, on the energy? And can you imagine that kind of engagement by the #1 economy of the world, America? I want to say thank you to President Trump. You have done well for Africa. You see, if I was planning mayhem under the illusion that Washington is going to support me, that signal from President Trump last week should have stopped BT, Kasukwere, and all those who were handling bombshell in their tracks to say there are no answering phones to mayhem in Washington. The purveyors of detraction in Africa, in Washington, have been shunted aside. So anabiti anana hakuna achiri kudaira mafoni ku Washington anakasukwere, because Washington has changed. USAID, it closed offices globally. You know what it used to do? They get 100% funding from the American Congress. 90% moves from one side of the Potomac River in Washington to the other side. They share it among themselves, the political class in Washington. Only 10% is shipped abroad to any place. Then it is given the cover that we are covering medicines, we are doing this. But most of that money was to fashion the world according to the whims of those people who wanted to control other countries, in particular in Africa. And their busiest post in Africa for the last 20 years has been Zimbabwe. The amount of skullduggery which was going on at USAID office in Zimbabwe is mind-boggling. And everybody who said, I want to remove Zanu from power, I want to remove from Mnangagwa from power, you get a check, even if you are lying. And those who were running the operation, they would go to rural areas. They have got huge Land Cruisers, 4x4s from Japan, Toyota Land Cruisers. They reach to the population, to the povo, the population in the rural area. They say, I've got goodies for you from America, from USAID, and the goodies are in the boot. And those goodies are supposed to satisfy a whole village. Your Land Cruiser is bigger than the goodies which you are taking. USAID, thank you, Comrade President. I'm now even tempted to call him a Comrade President. He has done revolutionary things, President Trump. Thank you for closing that Department of American government. It meant no good to Africa, it meant no good to the world, and it definitely was trying to become the nemesis of the Zimbabwe revolution. The closure of it was long overdue, and what was the name? Zulu in Washington. And all that paraphernalia of purported journalists who were in Washington at Voice of America, they have no jobs. Do you still listen to Voice of America? Closed. Now, this should have been signal to those who were trying to say 31 March, that America has closed the offices of mischief and mayhem. There is no way you are going to be supported. So this is a good thing that has happened, but I want to go back to my president. He is doing well even on the African stage. And incidentally, we have a very, and I repeat it again, we now have a very, very well-placed African constituents in Washington, D.C., which is the Afrikaners who have succeeded on the global stage. The Elon Musk's, the Theos of Sequoia Fund, the entrepreneurs of this world. These are people with an umbilical cord in Africa. So when somebody from your region succeeds in the capital of the supreme economy of the world, you must always try to identify with him because he comes from your home. So we are very happy that they are where they are, regardless of other things. There are crinkles which may come along the way. But my mother always used to say, never be jealous of a successful relative. Even if he doesn't give you food, you still point with, yeah, mayangu iyo, mazon. So last year, the president gave Elon Musk the license for Starlink. He was not a prophet. Come November, Trump wins. Come January, Elon Musk is in the inner circle of President Trump as he runs his government. Now, you are trying to convince America that Mnangagwa is a bad person. And you are trying to phone through your usual channels. Now there is somebody who is next to President Trump who says, Zimbabwe is good. They gave me a license to do business in Zimbabwe, and my name is Elon Musk. I don't have to toss a coin as to whose message is likely to reach the ears of President Trump first. I think that of Elon Musk will reach first. So we are very happy about the success of the Afrikaners in the American administration. We just want to remind them that Africa is their home. That's where the umbilical cord lies. That their role with a more positive, inclined America is to bring American expertise, to bring American technology, to bring American capital, to bring the huge, insatiable American market to Africa. America, if given a chance, it can do wonders. It has done wonders to China in the last 40 years, modernized China in a very short period of time. If we put our cards right with a more positive inclined America, we will make it, because human progress is shared. The human mind is the same. It doesn't matter its geographical location. If it is given opportunities, the human mind will grasp it. Apana imwe mind inonzi iri retarded. God created it that way. So we are hoping by this token that our relations with the big economy of the world continue to improve, riding upon the vote of confidence which America has shown in SADC by putting such a big amount into our neighbor Mozambique, 4.7 billion. This is a good thing for Zimbabwe. It's a good thing for SADC. It is a good thing for Africa. That, by and large, covers what I wanted to highlight, and that the template of the president about how minorities will be handled is the one which Africa should adopt, because before we suffered from oppressed majorities. We then addressed the issue of oppressed majorities. But oppression at individual level does not matter whether it is coming from a majority or from a minority. So President Mnangagwa, by what he has been doing in Matabeleland since he came, is showing that he has got the empathy of those who may have felt they have gripes and anxieties about majority rule. There's a reason for people to be complaining. So he has put his ears to the ground. And it is that template which we believe Africa must adapt to make sure that the checkered map of Africa from the Berlin Conference, it created groups along the way, which one way or the other, we feel that they have not been properly treated. So sensitivity to the issue of minorities is very important as we move forward, because we have addressed the bigger problem, which was the oppression of the majorities. Now we need to be live to the other problem, which is the gripes and anxieties of the minorities. And what is doing, the template which SADC and East Africa community are adopting in the DRC speaks to that direction by the continent. And it is a homage to the diplomacy, to the statesmanship of our president. And we believe that it will create room for Afrikaners, it will create room for Jewish groups, it will create room for any Islamic minorities, it will create room for Christian minorities, for religious minorities, for even tribal groups which feel are minorities. Everybody must feel that I have a stake in the realm. This is where we are going, and our president has been a practitioner of that statesmanship, which is reverberating on the African continent, but it is also resonating with even the global powers on the world stage. Now you want that man to be removed by intellectual ciphers, pretentious revolutionaries and drunken hallucinators. How do you countenance that? Something which is being good being thrown out because people simply have got a vaulting ambition at trying to be poor. I can't die before I become president. No, that's not the way to go. You must save the people first, then they can choose you to become a president. I thank you. I have an announcement to make. Besides the announcement about people going back to work, our youth league is receiving comrade from the ANC, the national president of the ANC youth league. I need to get his name right. Can you? Okay, I got it here. Colin Malachi. He is coming to Zimbabwe. We welcome him to Zimbabwe. We welcome the communion between the youth league. We are from SADC, born of the frontline states. We shared the trenches with our fellow liberation movements, and I've said it time and time again, SADC, we are neighbors, we are sisters, we are brothers. But beyond that, because we fought a common struggle against apartheid, colonialism, and racism, we acquired a political soul. We are the only economic grouping on the global stage which acquired a shared political soul. So even those who were trying to cause mayhem in Zimbabwe, they should have also thought about the reaction which that would have garnered from our neighboring countries. SADC would not have countenanced any nonsense of an unprocedural change of power in Zimbabwe. But because they are political ciphers and hallucinators, they never took that into consideration. Their ambition to seize power at State House took better charge of them. And all wise judgment was dispensed with. That's why they came to note yesterday. So welcome, Comrade Colin Malachi, and Comrade Paraza, and Comrade Bachakaire. They will be hosting their colleagues from South Africa. This is as it should be. We continue to revel in the traditions of the Tongogaras, the Chris Hanis, the Mandelas, the Mugabes, the Nkomos, the Samora Machels, the Julius Nyereres, the Kaundas, the Augustino Netos, and the same Njomas, who are the ones who shaped the region and gave us the destiny of shared progress and common prosperity. I thank you. I am ready to answer any questions in any direction.
If there are any questions, please state your name, your media house, and the question.
Thank you.
You spoke about the relationship that is there between the Afrikaners and the administration of President Donald Trump. But what do you have to say about the misinformation that is going on in South Africa, that there is a genocide against the African, what the nations that is then, nations that are then.
I am, as a diplomat, I'm an ambassador, I usually try to refrain from getting into the diplomatic issues of other countries. Our hope is that Pretoria, Tshwane, and Washington eventually, find each other and establish the rapport of state-to-state relations, which makes for progress. And along the way, I also hope that all South Africans aspire for a common destiny. If you have acquired influence, we are so happy about it, and we only hope that you use the influence which you have acquired on the global stage, particularly in an important city of power like Washington, that you use your influence for the positive good of Africa. I alluded to earlier on, when we have Afrikaners of global stature, in terms of business, succeeding in America, succeeding in China. People don't know. Tencent, the company which owns Alipay in South Africa, which is the largest on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, it was actually started by an Afrikaner called Koos Becker. And earlier on, I talked about Standard Bank being acquired by ICBC of China. It was acquired by a CBC of China because Standard Bank was not a European bank, it was an Afrikaner bank. The Chinese would not have put their money in a European bank because they are rivals, but they didn't mind putting their money in an Afrikaner bank. So what I am saying is that Afrikaners should see themselves as playing the role of avatars of capital into Africa. I'm happy to say the call for them to migrate to America to become refugees has not resonated with the majority of the Afrikaners in South Africa, because they identify with Africa as their home. So with this kind of attitude of the rank and file Afrikaners, there should be actually be enough room for gracious interaction between them and the president and the government of their country, South Africa. They should be, this route of confrontation, we Zimbabweans have traveled that route before, and on each and every occasion we have seen it doesn't help. And when we come to an accommodation, things go well. That's why our template in 1979 of elections for a liberation movement became the basis upon which South Africa acquired majority rule in 1994. The template came from Zimbabwe. We have had issues of our farmers being abused by the imperial power, white farmers, but with the global compensation agreement, we have come around to realize that we are destined to be citizens of the same land. We must reach out to each other. So my feeling is that if the Afrikaners can see, refashion their role, those who have succeeded on the global stage, is to being the introduction of capital, because the bane of Africa, why Africa has remained behind, is because we were denied capital. This is the age of capital. Karl Marx says, das Kapital, the world of capital. If you don't have capital, you don't make progress. And if you have among your citizens those who have succeeded to convince capital markets that they are viable as businessmen, their best role is to make sure that their homeland also gets capital. So if the Afrikaners who have succeeded can rethink their role and see that Mother Africa needs them so that we get as much capital because we use their relationships which they have established. You know that the PayPal mafia in Silicon Valley was made up of mostly Afrikaners. They are the ones who sold PayPal to Jeff Bezos. I can mention you their names. That's why I mentioned earlier on about an investment fund, one of the largest in the world, called Sequoia. It is owned by, I think, Thiel. He's an Afrikaner. I mean, look, these are African offspring who have made it on the global stage. We really think that if they put their minds together with their government and there's graciousness on all parties, a way forward can be found, just like our president has fashioned this approach to minorities. It is reverberating even in the Eastern DRC. We must not be prisoners of the past. It is always best to look into the windshield of your car. It is wider, it has a bigger view. It is not advisable to go to watch the rear view mirror of your car. The view, the spectrum is smaller. The view which you are seeing is much more constrained. So don't look into the rear view mirror as you drive the car, look into the windshield. That is my appeal as South Africa moves forward. But as to the details, we refrain from getting into it because it is the purview of sovereign countries, and there are proper channels which are ambassadors and diplomats and other people and envoys who should handle that. But we wish South Africa that they do, as South Africans of every hue and cry, of every origin, that they do find each other in the spirit of the 1994 Rainbow Coalition of President Nelson Mandela. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. You know, I'm actually chuffed. There are more people here from the fourth estate than the demonstrators who answered to to the hallucinators of 31st March. Thank you so much. Next time I'll ask them to invite you to be their fans. You may turn out in bigger numbers than the dismal figures which they showed yesterday. Thank you so much for coming to my press in your numbers. Please.
Just in brief, I know that you mentioned it a bit earlier. What is ZANU-PF's official response to the widespread closure of businesses and empty streets observed yesterday? In brief.
In brief, our people, like I said earlier on, they fought a war. They are very, very wary of trouble, of mayhem, because they know what it does. So they were cautious. It's called vigilance on their part. They wanted to see the depth, scale, and scope of what the detractors were up to. So they were assessing the situation. That's what exactly happened yesterday. They didn't want to fall into the trap of those in Mozambique, in Maputo, and then have unnecessary loss of life. So we are a very vigilant population, very risk-averse, because we have gone through the throes of war. And that's exactly what they exhibited yesterday. And they also wanted the assurance that their state is in charge. The army, the police, and the security service are in charge of the situation. So once that turned out to be, their confidence was restored. And next day they are back at work. I hope it answers you. Another? Please come, as many as you want.
Okay. Given that this call for protest came from a former ZANU-PF war veteran, does this signal internal divisions within the ruling party?
Look, ZANU-PF is a mass party. So we are not a vanguard party. We are a mass party. Along the way of a mass party, there are bound to be other individuals who may have certain ideas, and every once in a while they may try to test their mettle along with those ideas. But in this instance, the party has shown that it is very much united. We just had our Central Committee meeting. Everybody came out there, united. We are proceeding with the affairs of the party in a united way. The rejection of that element, that individual and his agenda of thuggery, of and procedural removal of leadership from power was rejected by the people of Zimbabwe under the leadership of Zanu PF. So that puts paid to your question. The people of Zimbabwe decided on them yesterday. Who am I to pass additional judgment? The failure speaks for itself about their agenda. Why should I try to delve? Ndingatovhiringidza chinhu chakangozvinakira mukaka haurungwe. Wanezuro mukaka wanga wakachena kuti ngwerewere. Haurungike. Vakapedzwa nevanhu nezuro. Ngavachimbonorara nebhutsu nenjombo. Blankets. Another question? Thank you. Tiri kufara zvachose nhasi kuti musi waApril Fools 1 President vari padare recabinet. Vanhu vemuZimbabwe vari kudzokera kumabasa. Ingadai yanzi April Fool's Day yarambwa nevanhu vemuZimbabwe. Vati hatidi April Fool's Day, tinoda zvinhu zvakangwara munyika medu. Saka vaya vakanga vachidaidzira kuti kuve nemhirizhonga nezhowe munyika muno zvashaya basa. Nenzira yekuti vanhu vemuZimbabwe nezuro vakazvigarira mudzimba dzavo, ndokutarisa kunze kwakadini, ndokuita chido neruvimbo nemasoja avo, nemapurisa avo, verunyararo vavo, kuti vanotinhadzira kuti nyika yedu irambe iri parunyararo. Pavakangozviona kuti masoja edu nemapurisa edu atirovimba navo vagona basa, nhasi vadzokera kumabasa avo avanoita mazuva ese. Isi tiri kutaura vanhu vemuZimbabwe kuti musaterere n'anya dzinorota dzichifunga kuti imi chamakarwira kuti nyika yedu ive nerusununguko, ive negutsa ruzhinji. Zvinongonzi munhu anongobva kumba kwamai kuonwa mabhodhoro edoro wofunga kuti kana adhakwa newaini anoenda unotaura kuti vanhu vemuZimbabwe vapinde mumastreets vonanga kuState House kunobvisa hurumende. Hakuna zvakadaro. Zvekare tinove neruvimbo nemasoja edu nemapurisa edu vakaratidza kuti havatereredze zvaitika mune dzimwe muAfrica, post colonial Africa, zvekuti majenerali anongopiridzirwa foni kubva kuParis kana kuLondon, kobuda ana Idi Amin, kobuda ana Ironsi, kobuda ana Bokassa, vanongoenda vakuenda kuState House kuti ndini ndakutonga ndine futi president makasarudzwa handina basa neni. Izvozvo hazviitike muZimbabwe. Saka ndinodada zvikuru nepresident kuti taakusvika panjodzi iyo yataatarisana nayo. Vakaisa vamatatu kumasoja, vakaisa vamangwanya kune zverunyararo, vakaisa vamutamba, vese vachitungamirirwa navaPV Sibanda. Masoja edu akaratidza kuti ari mugwara revakarwira rusununguko rwekuti hatiseenzese nyaya yepfuti kuti titonge nyika. Gutsa ruzhinji runobva pakuti vanhu vanovhotera mutongi. Amunangagwa vakatongerwa gore rakapera muna 2023 kuti vave president kuma-elections. Mamwe ma-elections ariko 2028. Vataura kuti ndichadzosera nyaya achazotungamira muZimbabwe mangwana kuma-elections kwavakabva ivo. Saka nezuro vanhu vemuZimbabwe vakaona kuti pane vamwe vanhu vaauda kuchinja chiwirirano ichocho, chirongwa ichocho, vakabva vati isa hatizvidi, tinomirira 2028. Pari zvino tiruda kuti basa rakanaka riri kuitwa naMnangagwa rekuti Zimbabwe irambe ichienderera mberi kuvandudzira nyaya dzezveupfumi, dai raramba rakadaro. Tichifarazve kuti nyika dzekunze hadzina kuda kudziridza sezvayachimboitwa zvikuru neAmerica kumashure. VaTrump vakapinda, vari kuratidza kuti vanoda kuti Africa ibudirire, havadi zvemhirizhonga nezhowe. ndosaka zvekuMozambique zvakadzimwa, ndosaka kuEastern DRC kwakuita runyararo. Zvekare toda kubva tavatenda kuti gore musvondo rakapera chairo vaTrump vakabvisa zigwama hombe re$4.7 billion kupa Mozambique kuti ivake migodhi yayo yegasi kuCabo Delgado kwakuine nyonga. The best vote yakaitwa naAmerica for peace and security and stability in Cabo Delgado was to write that check. Aiwa Trump ishashi vari kutigonera zvachose. Anokuda anoratidza rudo nokukupa chikwama, anobva anyora cheki yake. Ndo zvakaitwa navaTrump. Saka izvozvi vanoda kuti nyika ive nezvowezvo, dai vakazviona kuti ndo zviri kuitwa naAmerica, dai vasina kuenderera mberi nepfungwa dzekurasika dzazovanyadzisa nezuro vanhu vemuZimbabwe vati isu zvemhirizhonga hatidi, zvemadhisinyongoro taramba. Another question.
So what messages do you have for party members and war veterans who may sympathize with Geza's position?
Ndati mukaka wakanaka haurungwe. This is in Shona. The clear message of the failure of the adventurism yesterday should be enough to silence them once and for all. Because the people of Zimbabwe have refused to be associated with the unprocedural power changes, with the disorderly, with the disturbance of peace, and with mayhem. That should be enough for them. That their failure of their yesterday has proved salutary to them. If they have any sense of learning from failure, then their debacle yesterday should be a salutary lesson.
My last question. Looking ahead to the next elections, does ZANU-PF believe incidents like this that occurred yesterday will impact voter confidence in the party's leadership?
Yes, we believe that incidents like what happened yesterday will impact on the people of Zimbabwe to solidify their love of peace, democracy, and constitutionalism. And anybody else who may harbor variant ideas, you have been put on notice by the people of Zimbabwe. They won't tolerate that. They are a seasoned political national identity, the people of Zimbabwe. They know what is good for them. They know what is risk. They treasure the progress which the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe has delivered to them, and they also cherish the democratic ethos which has been the hallmark of Zimbabwean political life since we won independence. We are only a couple of days, 17 days away from the celebration of independence. A big party in Goko was about to be spoiled by political malcontents and the leadership chances. But the people of Zimbabwe said the party must go on in Gokwe, and they will be there to celebrate their 45th independence anniversary in Gokwe, in peace, in order, and in love, and in unity.
Are there any more questions? We thank you all for coming. We have reached the end of our press.
How many are we today? I can have an April Fool's chicken in lunch for every one of you.